All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Three Birds and a Punt. I am Afia and I am joined by my friend John. Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, fans. The name of this episode is called OTA Begins. Again, we're always happy to announce that we've partnered with AmazeMedia Labs to be the official Eagle podcast for the Pigskin Network. You can find Three Birds and a Punt on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Megaphone, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Twitter and on Instagram at Three Birds and a Punt. Please download and subscribe. We really have been appreciating all the fan support. You guys have been excellent. Thank you for sticking with us through all the trials and tribulations of the day. And now we're back in it and getting to talk our first love, our first passion, football.
Yeah,
Okay, finally football's back.
finally,
Um
thankfully.
our team, the Eagles, have waited the longest to start OTA, so it really has felt, very like when are we gonna be back? When are we gonna be back? When are we gonna be back? And finally, we just had our first OTAs, and by all accounts, it was going pretty well. I want to talk to you, John. I'm excited to tap in and talk to you about it today because it just seems like um, there's a lot of positive vibes going on with the Eagles right now, right? They just finished Devontae Smith's softball charity game, and they just seem like a lot of positive, good, great vibes. And
Mhm.
there seems to be some interesting changes with QB1. So what are your first impressions from the OTAs, which you've seen so far from the reporters and things of that nature?
I'm excited to see how those edge rushers perform
Mm.
because there's so it's hard to just seeing that they. I think the Eagles went 7 on 7. They really didn't run. They're not going to run any 11 on 11s, which is good. Prevents injuries, but you get to do more individual work with like said group. And the defensive end outside linebacker room is looking amazing. Think about where we were last year and think about the additions we added this offseason. You can't help but be excited about the people we have, the people we're getting back, and Brandon Graham and um, just Hassan Reddick. Um, I'm excited to see that group. I'm excited to see how Jordan Davis does. I think he's going to end up being more than just a rotational two down defensive tackle. I think he's going to end. They're going to unleash that dude. I think he's going to be a foundational piece for future seasons. Maybe not this year because he's going to learn under Fletch and Gravedigger and which is Hargrave if you guys don't know. But that linebacker group is improved. And then we look at the offensive side of the ball. Oh my goodness, look at that receiver room is looking stout. What was
Mhm.
once a weakness is now a supreme strength. Like AJ Brown comes in, he's totally professional. And that's you need a seasoned guy to lead that room. And who better to have than AJ Brown? You have Quez Watkins, who I think is going to have a spectacular year in the slot, and my boy Devontae. I can't wait. Jalen Hurts looks good. He's taking on a more aggressive approach to his offseason, working with Tom House and working on the stone mechanics. And really, at the season's end, he was forthcoming and no understanding that he had to work on his accuracy and his pre-read snaps. And he really has taken a full grasp at like getting that down, and I look for an improved season from him. So it's kind of good to see the Chris Sims of the world put him down a few pedestals because you know what, the sky's only the limit. And I
Yeah,
said that
no,
multiple times. I really do. I feel very bullish on him and on the team and the offense as a whole, and it's going to be great.
John, I think you brought up some very great points, and I'm definitely inclined to agree with you. Right? I mean, when Whip's not here, we are the most positive pals on the podcast platform when it comes to the Eagles, because I do agree with you. Right? Like I think it's we love the 11 on 11s, but I agree the Eagles have definitely taken a really I would say, radical approach to player safety this season. They've really decided that they wanted to limit the amount of OTAs they get. You're allowed 10, they're only doing 6. They're not doing any mini camps. There's not going to be any 11 on 11s, as John so helpfully pointed out. So I do think that that leads a lot of opportunity for them to really spend this time. I think coaches really focus on working on the fundamentals, on making sure that the team actually connects and really feeds into a competitive nature. And I do think that he's using this opportunity to really teach a little bit more. And I think that's going to really pay off in the long run, because when you get tired, you're going to lean back and fall back on your fundamentals. And I think John's having a little technical difficulties, so we'll be right back with him, and I'll just keep things going here. The three birds, as with coach, we're preaching fundamentals. So I really genuinely do see the Eagles, being a way more healthy team this season. And I think that's going to pay off definitely in the later parts of the year. And John mentioned the defense and how it's being currently constructed in a very unique way. We now have different waves of units. We're now not just having a traditional defensive end, defensive tackle groups. We're having defensive end, defensive tackle, and then this hybrid linebacker defensive end group that I think is going to be more inclined to rush the quarterback. John mentioned Hassan Riddick, and that's going to be like this great opportunity for us to really see how well he can rush the quarterback. I think when we started OTAs, we saw that TJ Edwards and Kasir White, I believe, are our first two linebackers up. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of 4-2, hybrids, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this defense really works itself out. And I'm really looking forward, honestly, like John said, to see the offense. That was my big takeaway from these OTAs, was they mentioned how well Jalen was throwing the ball, and I was gratified to hear that, because that's really what we want. Some of these bombs were excellent completions, and even when he was missing, he was throwing it long, which I think that is something the receivers are asking for and are looking for. But really, what I'm hoping to see from Jalen is a better, like John mentioned, his pre snap reads, his ability to go through his more than his first two reads, go through his progressions after the ball is snapped, him not having any more wasted movements in the pocket, his body, his hips seem a little bit more fluid, less wide, and also his ability to get the crossers. His ability to work the middle of the field. I understand maybe for Jalen, he may not ever be super comfortable with the middle of the field, but his ability to be able to work the middle of the field as needed, so that the defense can't key in on the fact that he tends to go outside in order to sort of intercept or disrupt the play. So I'm definitely hoping to see him really come into his own and become more and more confident about what's going on in the middle of the field. And so that's something we'll hopefully see as we keep going on. What we're hoping to see, I'm thinking that the Eagles are saying to themselves, hey, we're going to get most of our good workout happening from these two practices we're going to be having, I think, with the Dolphins, and I believe maybe perhaps with the Bengals. I'm not sure about that one, but at the bare minimum, we're going to be working with the Dolphins. And when we're working with the Dolphins, and I see I've got John back. Hey, John, I'm talking about the fact that we're going to be having these joint practices with the Dolphins and I believe maybe the Bengals. And that'll be the opportunity for us to get our real, so let's say 11 on 11 work in. And that's why the Eagles are deciding not to actually do 11 on 11 work this off season, right? Because they're feeling like they'll get a lot of that good competition in when we do these joint practices. So I think it'll be a really good opportunity to really see where we are at once training camp comes and those practices start coming in. But for this first OTA, it's been pretty good. The vibes are immaculate, as they say. Um, and that leads us to be optimistic that this season we'll be able to build off of that strong, first season. Nick seems to have a really good understanding of how he wants the team to be run, how he wants to increase competitiveness and treat and preach fundamentals and use this opportunity to be teaching more. And I think that that's really going to pay off in the later end of the season when your body is worn down and you're really going to be leaning more back on what you learned, in the summer to kind of push you through than really having to necessarily learn all that stuff now when you're really so far in the season and you're tired.
Very true. I think scaling back the OTAs also will keep us fresh. Last year we were in the best health we've had in years. Aside from like say Malu's injury and Jack Driscoll and Brandon Graham, of course, we really were blessed health wise. Um,
Absolutely. No, I agree, and I think that outside of those, freak injuries, we didn't have as many, like say, soft core, soft tissue injuries, and I think that was one of the downfalls to Doug's tenure is that after a while he just couldn't overcome all these injuries that we had, and we revamped the medical side of things like 2 3 times before we finally seem to have hit on a formula that's working. Um, I want to shift our focus a little bit to go coaching and to talk about some of the changes that have happened on the coaching side of the ball and how that is going to have perhaps the most influential impact on this season so far. In particular, I'm talking about the fact that our offensive coordinator Shane Steichen is now fully taking over play calling duties. That's something that he revealed in a press conference that he had with the Eagles beat reporters. And so I'm curious your opinion, John, on the fact that Nick is no longer calling plays or stopped calling plays somewhere in the second half of last season, which coincided with us having our sort of offensive um push, right? That really led us to where we are in the playoffs, and now he's going to be taking over play calling full time. How do you feel like that's going to affect this season moving forward?
it'll be good because he knows his players' strengths and weaknesses and what play calls to call. And Coach Seriani actually touched on this. He said that we as a staff we've grown from last year, and a lot of that is understanding what we do well, what we don't do well, and knowing the personnel with their strengths and weaknesses, and really allowing Shane to grow into that role of this calling plays. But everything that Shane calls, Coach Seriani puts together. They put together the plays for the hot sheet or the call sheet, and basically they just go down. He lets them go, and that autonomy is really what you need for
Mhm.
young staff. It could turn out to be really good.
Yeah.
It could be
I
really
think it
good.
shows a lot of trust, right? In
It does
the
indeed.
in the growth that Shane has been able to show. And we tend to forget that Shane had a lot to do with Justin Herbert's development into a Pro Bowl quarterback. He was over there with the Chargers before we picked him up as our offensive coordinator when things changed over there. So he's a very bright mind. And I do think allowing Nick to take on a more CEO role on the head coaching side. Him being able to oversee every element of the football field, not just the offensive side. I think will be a huge boon. To the Eagles and their game plan this season, especially because I think it'll definitely allow for Nick or coach not to feel maybe divided, his attention be so divided, and he can really focus on how to be a head coach in all phases of the game. I think it's gonna hopefully also pay off in a huge way for Jalen. He's finally having a lot of continuity. This is they people have mentioned a lot that this is the first time since high school that he'll be in the same offense for the second year in the row. I think there's a lot to be said for that level of continuity and his ability to know where all the bones are buried, so to speak, for him to actually understand what the offensive play is. We have a great reputation of Jalen being a real grinder, a tape grinder, loves being in the film room, loves digesting all that information. I think that'll pay off well if you have, for the second year in a row, an offensive coordinator who really understands what you like to do, what makes you comfortable, and also you have the same quarterback coach who again knows what you like to do, knows how to make you feel comfortable, and are prepared to really work with you in that way. So I think it could really be beneficial to not have to make this switch in the middle of the season like they did last year, but really have it all laid out now. And I think, Shane mentioned great point that if coach wants something called, they make the game plan during the week. So by the time Sunday comes, it's really not a matter of like, I'm calling this. Like, this is something we've all collectively decided earlier in the week that these were the plays that we feel comfortable with. I'm just choosing to bring them forth at different levels of the game as I feel it needs to be called. So I do think that that collaborative process won't go away.
I agree, and that continuity speaks volumes, especially late in the season.
Mhm.
You're not trying to get players up to speed. You're just installing off of what you already built, and that's a great thing. If you could like expand your playbook going into a play on the way to a long playoff push, it goes a long way. It could be a special season. It could be a special season. I saw one of the writers talk about how this is the stars are aligning basically,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you can only feel like that could be true. You never know. You never know. As long as they keep working towards it, and it seems like they are, and it seems like Howie made the right decisions. It looks like Coach added the right personnel, and we have the leaders in house to get it done. I think.
I hope so. It looks good on paper, and I'm always wary when it looks good on paper. I think Philly would be very much agreeing with me. All Eagles fans would agree with me that we tend to do best when we're flying a little bit under the radar. When expectations are like at their lowest for us, we tend to really go out and surprise people and really, outmatch all our expectations. And it feels like, the fans have a lot of really positive expectations this season. Even me, last season was just vibes, and we ended up in the playoffs, and it was like, okay, well, all right, okay. And this season, I'm actually like, hey, we are expecting like bare minimum is to make it to the playoffs, and we all know that. We're all looking at this season and we're saying anything other than a playoff when it's a complete and utter bust. That's a lot of expectations for a young team that
It
really
is.
doesn't have, all of our elements of winners are really, these veterans who are 1 or 2 to 3 seasons away from, retiring. So I think it might be a lot to ask for this young group to really come in and really have all these pieces in place all together. It looks great on paper. I'm definitely hoping that it'll what we've been putting into theory will come to fruition in practice. But I've been an Eagles fan too long. I know the signs of expecting too much and the pain
So
when it inevitably comes to a bitter crash. So I'm just trying to keep it all in perspective that it really does rely on a lot of things going our way in a ways we can't control. And so I'm very cautious to say, everything looks good so far for what they may have and could have planned. They've done their best, but we really won't know. We really will not know. Jalen may not take the step we need him to take. The wide receivers may not be as good as we want them to be. The defense may not be as in sync as we want it to be, and it may take some time. Being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, um, being being a Philadelphia fan in general has sort of made you numb and sort of know that you if you get nice things, it doesn't last very long.
that's true. It could be fool's gold all along.
It really could. So I just gotta put in, in the spirit of whip, I just had to toss in a little Negadelphia in there just so we don't get too ahead of ourselves and start and singing Super Bowl, because I don't know if the Eagles are in that. Like, when I think of
Wow.
a perennial playoff team, I think about the Green Bay Packers, right? I think about, for at one point, the Seattle Seahawks. I think about the Patriots, right? At one point, like, you can just almost guarantee no matter what they're gonna make it. The Eagles aren't quite there now. Have we been to the playoffs more often than not? Yeah, for sure. More
2 of the
often
last
than any
3
other
years,
team in the.
surprisingly.
Yeah, exactly, right. More than any other team in the NFC East, but we're
Mhm.
not perennial. You can't necessarily, like, you can count on it, like you set your watch to it. And until that becomes the case, until it's almost an afterthought, I'm always going to be a little cautious that we're not over the hump of having like bad luck yet. But
Absolutely.
anyway, sorry. Let me What were you going to say, John?
No, I'm on board with you on that because 1000%.
Yeah. Yeah, well, all right, let's get to the promo. We've got a good one for you folks tonight. Okay, are you ready for the NBA champs to be crowned? Join the finals actions with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make any $5 NBA bet and get $150 in free bets instantly. Looking to turn another small bet into a big payday during the NBA finals? With DraftKings same game parlay, you could do just that. This NBA season, a customer placed a $5 game parlay and won over $5,000. Wow, what a great deal. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets like which team will win, total threes made, total rebounds, and more. And boom, you have the shot to win even a bigger payout. Now, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. You see it scrolling down your screen. Make any $5 bet on the NBA Finals and get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code TPPN. You see it on your screen. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sporting bets partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Oh man, you guys have to get that deal. It's
That's
a
a good
great
deal.
deal.
That's a great deal.
That's a great deal. All right, so I really want to continue on with this conversation about the Eagles and their expectations, and I want to know from your perspective, who do you feel like has the most approved this Eagles season? You can name anybody in the organization, really. It doesn't necessarily just mean players. That you feel like really has the most approved, and we should be expecting big things from.
Marcus Epps.
Marcus, I would all people you would have said. I wouldn't have thought it would have been Marcus X. Tell me why.
He has the opportunity. He's shown flashes. He was good coming out of Wyoming. Walked on at Wyoming from LA, like a really down to earth and humble dude. He's an introvert, but like the dude can play. He teammates love him. Honestly, I think he could take a step this year. I think he could shore up the back end. It's just a matter of playing over 300 snaps. I think he played 252 or something like that last season, and I think he's ready to stake a claim as one of the top 10 safeties in the league. He has good range. He has good coverage ability. He can come down and fill, and hit, as we saw in that Carolina Panther game. He came up and wrecked the running back. I forget the running back's name, but he came up and wrecked. I was like, wow, that kid is, if he could get consistent snaps with another safety that's going to hold his end down, whether it be in the box or up high, I think we could have a good safety for years to come. And he's still fairly young. I think there is pressure from him. The Eagles have looked outside in adding Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. They missed out on Marcus Williams, the safety from the Saints, who left and signed a big deal with the Ravens. So I think that sure he's aware that they're not looking to replace him, but they were looking at potentially upgrade that position. Absolutely. But I'm sure they said that, you know what, they kept going over all the options and they kept coming back to him. And I think now he has the prime opportunity to shore it up for years to come. It's going to come with um, Coach Gannon calling great coverage, calling great plays, and him being in a good position. I think he will because he played fairly well last year. In the, I just need to get bigger. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
no, I definitely, you know what, it's an under radar pick, but I would agree with you. There's a lot riding on that safety position. We haven't solidified it. You're right that where there are chances that we're looking to put more talent in that position, but he's definitely right now has the opportunity to make his mark and hopefully keep that job for as long as possible. It's going to be one of those situations where I think that the Eagles will be looking for opportunities. Like there was talk of us trading for that Raven safety. There's that Bengals safety that's out there lurking that says he's not going to play on his franchise deal. So there's a lot of opportunities that could happen. Now that June 1st has come and gone, I think that will open up a lot of other opportunities because I think that makes it so that the whatever they sign a trader isn't counting against the cap in some way that before that June 1st date it would have. So I think Howie's always doing a lot of cap maneuvering around this time. So I definitely think that Marcus should be hungry for it and hopefully he'll do well in it. But it's something that I mean, if they end up picking somebody up in training camp, I won't say it's because he didn't play hard or practice hard. It'll just because it was just an opportunity to upgrade that they couldn't pass up. I definitely think that's a important um area of the team to be thinking about and looking at. I think you already know where I'm gonna go with my player. It's Jalen Hurts. It's QB1.
without a doubt.
I mean I don't think I should have to explain why, but I love to talk, so I will. You know, we're only gonna go as far as really Jalen's ability to out to outmatch what his baseline is. Okay, we all know that Jalen Hurts is a very good running quarterback, right? He's got 10 rushing touchdowns, which I think is the most in franchise history or something like that in a season. He's excellent when it comes to running the ball and doing the things like that. But we really need to see his maturation as a passer, his ability to be consistent and to be able to get the ball where we need it to be each and every time we need it to be it. That is still a huge question. And until that question is answered in a way that is positive and definitive, it's still going to be a situation where if the Eagles, needed, they would have upgraded the position. I don't think it's um a coincidence that even though Jalen was working with Tom House and he's grinding in the tape room and he's doing all the things he needs to do to be uh the franchise quarterback, that the Eagles were looking in on Russell Wilson, that the Eagles were looking in on Deshaun Watson, that the Eagles looked in on Aaron Rodgers. Like even with the things that Jalen went to do and we're hoping will pay off for him, the Eagles were still thinking that if they could, they would have upgraded the position had that opportunity been available. So I do think that, insofar as whatever Jalen will want to evolve and grow as a player, there's still that ceiling, and I know everybody wants that ceiling to be way higher than it may be, but we just really don't know. And I think that the Eagles have done an excellent job of being able to set the narrative to say that they really made sure that they give him every opportunity to figure it out, because they literally put real assets into trading for his best friend, right? Like you don't do that with a guy you don't believe has the opportunity to be your franchise, right? So it's a win-win for them. Whether Jalen ends up performing or he doesn't, and they end up being in a position to draft a QB, and then you've got your ready-made QB, wide receiver one, wide receiver two, and you hopefully got a better defense than you had the year before. So I definitely think that Jalen has a lot to prove, because if you're looking at it, take a step back, you say this team is ready made for a QB that can win.
That's true. I agree.
And so far, we know that when it came to playing teams over 500, we weren't good at it. We couldn't win against good teams. And so that's going to be a big question this season. We're obviously not going to be playing that many winning teams. Thankfully, we have an easy schedule, like the third easiest schedule in the league or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, we've got some good games, some benchmark games that we're going to be able to look at and hopefully be able to see a lot when it comes to Jalen and his ability to really take hold of that franchise label.
I think they can't afford to start off slow. I think they
Mm-hmm.
have to start off 4-0 or
Yeah.
4-1 going into that bye.
Mm-hmm.
They have to. There's no excuse. If
Yeah,
they
I
don't,
agree.
if they aren't 4-1 or 5-0, 4-0 going into that fifth week, it's gonna be rough.
Listen, if we don't win that game against the Lions, it's gonna be rough.
Oh yeah,
Okay, like people are already looking at that as an absolute dub. So I just think that I mean, there's a little bit of a potential to get smacked in the mouth, but we better not get smacked in the mouth.
better not. Yeah,
So,
that's
um,
true.
yeah. All right, let's get into our last topic of the night. We've got some big front office changes. I think it's been a while since the Eagles have had this many changes. I know every year we're always adding people, taking people off, but we really haven't had this much turnover in quite some time. I think it's really I've been reading a lot of different articles about the cultivation of Howie's power recently and how it's changed and shifted. He's less taking in a lot of opinions from other people and he's more going with his gut. I think I read a really good article by Marcus Hayes on that, and Jeff McClain's been excellent in his dogged, intrepid reporting on how the sort of manifestations inside the NovaCare complex get done. Um, we heard recently that Jeffrey Lurie's son, has now taken on an official role within the Eagles organization as he's getting groomed to take over. Andy Weidel's out. He's back to Pittsburgh to be the assistant GM there. We just elevated Alec Hallaby and this other man to be two assistant GMs, titles we haven't given out for a very long time. It's a lot of changes. I'm wondering what your take is on these changes, John, and what do you think the results of these changes are going to be for the Eagles front office moving forward?
I like Joe Ferrari. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's a guy that comes from the background of working with the the but like with the what was it the minority hiring process or like minority fellowship of the NFL and
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
I knew
And
he worked with the NFL league. Is that where he worked?
yep.
Okay,
Um,
excellent.
in all counts, like he is a good person and of with a lot of knowledge that could help on as far as like contracts and things like that. Um, Losing Andy Weidel is going to be rough, but
Yeah. There's nobody on the scouting side with his sort of heft, like I think what we were seeing maybe for the last couple of seasons was a good balance between analytics and scouting, or maybe a little bit more to the scouting side and a little bit away from the analytics. But now with Alex Hallaby being elevated to that assistant GM role, and we don't have, like, unless he's hiring a third assistant GM, whatever scouting head they end up ultimately choosing, it's still going to be beneath these two assistant GMs. So now we've got an analytic guy being the assistant GM, and we've got Ferrari, who is seen as sort of the conduit between coaching and front office. All he does, compliance and operations, right? So he kind
mhm.
of makes sure things are flowing smoothly. So who's our scouting equivalent? I'm a little nervous about that because I do think the league is trending in that direction where we're not putting so much of an emphasis on your ability to have a scouting background. But I do think that's still ultimately very important when it comes to drafting and really when it comes to being able to pick talent in free agency and trading and stuff like that. So I always get a little nervous when I see the Eagles start to lean a little bit back towards the numbers, because that can be a little deceiving. So it'll be interesting to see how Howie balances this out, especially because we can clearly see now with Tom Donahue leaving and these
Mhm.
other senior assistants coming in that Howie's not going to be relying so much on other people's voices anymore.
Very true. I think we added Brandon Hunt from the Steelers as well,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the director of scouting for the Browns is going to
Hmm.
run our scouting department. I think um, they'll fall in because Howie, you know what, iron sharpens iron, and
Hmm.
like we lose a lot of good people, but we seem to have restocked a few times. Like we got lucky when we got
Hmm.
Joe Douglas and Andy Whittle to begin with. Honestly, when we signed them, I was like, wow, these guys are like you could tell
Powerhouses.
they had it, and it showed. And then I'm confident that the additions that we have will get us over the hump. Now, there's a story about Alex Hallaby getting chewed out by Doug Peterson when Doug Peterson was still
Yeah,
coaching.
Doug Peterson didn't like Alex Hallaby. He thought he was way too analytical and didn't put enough emphasis on real life examples, like if the numbers say this, then this is what the numbers say, even though maybe that isn't, like, we have to allow some room for human error or human ingenuity or human
Mhm.
creativity to beat whatever the numbers say. That's football and an elephant. It's not baseball, right? In baseball you get so many games, and so that averages out to whatever it is that your numbers tell you, but in football it doesn't quite work out that way. Like, more often than not, you may see elements of intangibles that you can't put on a sheet. And so I worry about that part of it, as far as him funneling up information to the big guy Howie. All of it maybe is going to be coming from an analytical lens that isn't going to be thinking about real world properties.
And one thing is you can't measure heart, and that's
Yeah.
one thing. Like I think all the additions that we have on the defensive side of the ball,
Hmm.
oof, I just oof.
Right.
Oof, like Nakobe Dean. We got Nakobe Dean in the third round. We got
Right.
Jordan Davis in the first round. We have Hassan Reddick. That Kyron Johnson from Kansas was nice as a defensive end. A little bigger defensive end, but all of the additions on defense are just like strong willed alpha players. And that's kind of what we were missing if you think about it, especially late in the season. Like those Cowboys games, I think specifically for those Cowboys games, because there's no they're looking to be more competitive. They want guys that are like going to be angry and bring it, and that's the what you build a team around. You build a team around tough, hard nosed players. Then you like that's the commonality. You need that. You need that for a winning football program. You could do
I
X and
agree.
O's all you want, but if the player doesn't play with that,
Right,
it's
that
not gonna
intensity.
happen.
And I think that's what Nick you really, really looks for in his players, is that dog in them, right? He
Mhm.
really wants his players to have this huge competitive spirit. So I do think that it's going to be one of those elements that if Nick is you looking for this sort of intangible energy from these people, they're really going to constantly be questioning that portion of it, when they're looking at these stats and these figures of these guys, saying, look, measurables say that, I'm just thinking about JJ, okay, and how everyone thought, because the measurable said that he should make an excellent, X receiver, he had the body makeup for it, that would automatically make him a good X receiver. And just because I've got the whiff span or the body span, this and the third, doesn't mean that I'm gonna necessarily be able to live up to whatever my potential is.
Jalen Rieger too.
Aptitude is not ability, so we
Mhm.
really have to be understanding that and recognizing that just because you have all these metrics and you're assuming that this person is meeting or fitting in these defined metrics, that doesn't these super defined metrics, that doesn't mean that they're always going to be able to end up performing as optimally or exactly as you want them to be. And I feel like I've heard too many I've heard too many articles now that have basically pushed off every bad decision that we've made in the draft to someone other than Howie, right? Howie let himself be swayed this way. Howie, and so that that's just goes to show you that that's him always positioning himself to never be the one holding the bag, which is fine. But you've chosen to not have a personnel guy with any heft for now on your side. You've taken on this way where Alex has more say than ever, and now we have to hopefully see what that looks like in this upcoming drafts. If they rely too much on analytics and not enough on tape or scouting, I think it's going to be a real detriment and honestly a real pattern because it's what I expect. So this is just a heartbringing of what I sort of am expecting to sort of. Um, let's hope that the peak is us winning the Super Bowl because the valley is going to be bad as always.
I agree.
Well, all right. That has been another great episode of Three Birds and a Punt. Please make sure you subscribe and download to the podcast. We're streaming on Apple, Spotify, Megaphone, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you're following us on Apple. So Twitter, Instagram at Three Birds and a Punt. You can follow me at According to Afia on Twitter, and you can follow my friend John. Where can they follow you at?
John Monroe Jr. on Twitter.
Jr. on Twitter, okay? And please hit that subscribe and follow button right now. Thank you. This has been another episode of Three Birds and a Punt. Go Birds.
Go Birds.